Why did you come to Crystal Cove, Mr. Shepherd? We don't get many attractions like yours here. It was the cheese. The cheese told me to come here. Welcome to another episode of the Unmasked History of Scooby-Doo, the podcast where we delve into the mystery of Scooby-Doo media, getting clues from people who helped bring our favorite mystery-solving dog to life on various platforms, and maybe eating some Scooby snacks along the way. I'm your host, Alexa Lawler.
We're just solving mysteries. All the kids are doing it.
No, they're not.
What have you kids done now?
You can call me
Mr. E!
Nibiru.
Welcome to the second episode in this month's Mystery Incorporated theme. In this one, we have Roger Eschbacher, who wrote 5 episodes of the show, including Battle of the Humungonauts and the Hodag of Horror, which is where the lovely opening quote came from. Let's just get right into it. Hi, Roger. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Alexa?
I'm good. Thanks so much for taking the time out today to chat to me.
No problem. I've been looking forward to it.
So if you're up for it, I'd like to start off with a quick 3-question trivia game.
Uh-oh.
And each question has to do with an episode that you wrote.
Oh, no. Well, hopefully you will be kind to me. I know you will, but also the listeners. I don't have necessarily an encyclopedic memory of all the stuff I've written, but I will do my best.
Definitely. So the first question is, what are the names of the brothers who are revealed to be dressing up as the Humungonauts?
Oh, shoot. I don't know. See?
Max and Jax Minner.
Oh, okay, there you go. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I remember now the name Minner came from a librarian friend of mine, Ann Minner, and so I appropriated her last name for the brothers.
Okay. And what was the name of the top secret video game platform in the Wild Brood?
I don't know. I think I'm failing this horribly. I'm sorry.
Swordfish.
Oh, of course, which is, of course, a reference from old Marx Brothers movie.
And last question, true or false, the Hodag of Horror is based on a real folkloric animal from Wisconsin?
That is true, for sure.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And how did that come about, actually?
That came about via one of the producers and I guess sort of the head writer of the show early on, especially Mitch Watson, had a had a thing about the Hodag and thought it was pretty funny, and I guess some of the other producers did too. And I had never heard of it before, but when they mentioned it, I thought it was hilarious. So I went with it.
Perfect. And so to start off the general questions, what's your relationship to Scooby-Doo? Did you watch it all?
Yeah, I watched it growing up. The original series and various other versions along the way. But yeah, when I heard that there was a possible opening for a writer on the Mystery Incorporated, I was like, yes, and I called my agents and talked to them and had them get me in on a meeting with Mitch, and the meeting went well. He knew me from my work at the Groundlings, which is a comedy theater out here in Los Angeles, and next thing I know, I'm writing scripts.
And how did you come to write for animation to begin with?
Once again, that's through the groundlings. If you need a deeper explanation of what the groundlings is, you're more than welcome to ask. But basically, a friend of mine who was in the groundlings with me, named Mark Steen, was working on a show called Real Monsters, which was a Klasky Chupo project that was on Nickelodeon. And it was about the sort of the alternate world or alternative world of monsters that sort of exist within our everyday world. And Mark Steen was the head writer, the story editor, I should say, on Our Real Monsters. And he asked me if I, wanted to pitch some ideas, and I did, and started getting into it and writing animation scripts. And I've always loved animation. Especially like early anime like Speed Racer and Astro Boy and all that. So that sort of reveals my age. But I've always loved that stuff. And so when I had an opportunity to get into it, I jumped at the chance and have been doing it ever since.
Was writing animation something you had ever considered as a career?
Not up until that point. I've been trying to, get into writing sitcoms and all that stuff since I came out here in Los Angeles. But it's just one of those things where I don't know, it kind of pays to keep your eyes and ears open. And, even if it's something that you weren't necessarily thinking you could do or even had an inclination to do it. Mark mentioned this, and I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I do love, I do love watching animation. To this day, I enjoy it, and so the right thing to do from my perspective is kind of just go, all right, well, I'll give this a shot, and I went along and have been enjoying the ride ever since.
And was there ever a specific moment when you realized that you wanted to be a writer?
Um, I would say like back in grade school, I'm also an author, but back in grade school, early grade school, I started reading. I'm a vociferous reader, and I read a lot, and I always have. And I don't know, for me anyway, when you start reading a lot, that led me to want to maybe someday, sort of a pipe dream, but someday like write a book. And so, I eventually got into that. I always had sort of an inclination to be a writer. And when I came out here to Los Angeles, I'm originally from St. Louis. And when I came out here to Los Angeles, I was almost immediately trying to get work as a writer on different shows. So I don't know. I've always had that sort of inclination, but I would say that it started out with me liking to read books a whole lot.
When it comes to writing shows, what's the difference between writing for animation and writing for like a live action sitcom?
Well, I would say the main difference is that in animation, you have to make sure you pretty much describe anything that you actually want to see. Because, if you think about it with live action, you have, the actors have been hired to sort of interpret characters and interpret the script, and they'll actually sort of like add a lot of their own to that. But in terms of animation, if you think about it, basically you have artists sitting at their desk, basically looking at the script, and if it's not on the script, I mean, the artists are so talented that work in animation. They'll add stuff if there's gaps and all that, but it really helps if you as the writer is very diligent in describing what needs to be seen on the screen. So I would say like in a script, the descriptions part of it, the action tends to be a little more drawn out than definitely like a screenplay, but also even for a standard sitcom, the descriptions in sitcoms and in film are generally, unless it's a high action thing where it's very specific. Let's say like a Marvel universe sort of thing. Uh, the descriptions are pretty much short because the interpretation of the descriptions and the scenes are left largely up to the director and the actors.
When it came to Scooby-Doo specifically, were you given a premise for the episode before writing it, or did you get to kind of run wild and come up with the monster and things like that?
A little bit of both. I would say, if we're going to split percentages, I would say like 10% of the time, 15% of the time, it was stuff that I pitched, like a story idea or whatever. But the guys who were, running the show, Mitch and Michael and Tony and Spike and all those guys, really this series, Scooby series in particular, was really well thought out by people like Mitch and all that ahead of time, because they not only had a sort of monster du jour, but they also had a series-wide arc that was spread out over 2 seasons. So they really kind of had to know, they really knew where they wanted to go. And so, they would give a sort of a general premise, and then I or the other writers would come into the office, and we would work out the beats of that particular episode, and then I would go away and sort of clean up an outline and send it back, and they would tweak something and send it back, and then once I was given the go to write the script, it was pretty much all on me, and so a lot of the and those guys are so funny. I mean, they contributed mightily to dialogue and all that stuff, but a lot of the fun sort of dialogue and little takes, the characters' takes on the kind of stuff that was going on, and a lot of the story, the actual story, the nuts and bolts of the story were left to me and the other writers too. So it was actually one of the most fun shows I've ever written on in that regard, and we were able to put they were totally open to a lot of smart aleck jokes and what have you. So it was a great fun show to work on.
And what were some of the ideas that you had pitched?
Oh, it was mostly stuff early on. Again, it's been a while since we did the show, so if I had to come up with something particular, I could go back through the scripts and go, oh yeah, that was mine. But I would say it was very much a collaborative effort, but a lot of the actual story, for reasons that I mentioned, that it was a 2 seasons series-wide arc, came out of those guys.
And what was it like to write for a Scooby-Doo show that did have that overarching story across the 2 seasons?
Well, I personally, I loved it. I thought it was really cool that they gave a lot of thought to that, and obviously ahead of time, that's how it was pitched. And I don't know, I thought that was a lot of fun. That they ended up doing something like that. It was a little out of the ordinary, as I'm sure you'd agree, for what a standard Scooby series might be like. And I really appreciated the amount of thought and the storytelling that went into that. I write science fiction and fantasy novels as sort of my side hustle, and so I appreciate a good sort of a deeper story. And don't get me wrong, I love the monster of the day angles, and those are always a lot of fun to write. But I really enjoyed that there was sort of a deeper level to this series than is normally the case with other series. Not a knock against the other series. It is what it is. I mean, that's the beauty of Scooby-Doo. But I really did enjoy the sort of deeper aspect a series-wide arc. But yeah, that was actually sort of the beauty of it, and in my opinion, and you know, I'm biased because I worked. This is the series I worked on, and I think it's the best personally. It's just no offense to anyone else, but I think it's the best. But that was really sort of like the fun, cool aspect of it from my perspective is that they had worked out a lot of this stuff, uh, and were able to tell a story with, in my opinion, great depth. And like I was saying, with the books and stuff like that, you kind of have to dig a little bit deeper with a story if you're going to plot out a novel. You know, it's got to be a little bit deeper, and I think those guys accomplished that just on an amazing level.
And in the episodes that you had written, there was a couple of interesting reveals. Like in the Hodag, they find the piece of the planispheric disc in the cheese. And
Right,
the Night on Haunted Mountain, they have like that huge Spanish conquistador story revealed. What was it like to be able
right.
to take a stab at writing that?
It was a lot of fun. I mean, because like I said, we would go, we writers, or I would go in to have that big session where we sort of like beat everything out, and it was really cool to sort of like discover that, in my particular episode, a certain piece was revealed, and the sort of fun challenge to that was working it in to the monster of the day sort of challenge, and because the two were often connected, and so it was just sort of like fun to use your brain to sort of like see how that was going to work out, but also just to learn from them, that at this point this piece of the disc is uncovered, and the gang have found another one. So I thought that was pretty cool, to be honest.
How do you keep the voices of the characters consistent?
Well, I mean, that's, people like Mitch and Michael, that's sort of what their job is their job is to keep track of that kind of stuff. But I mean, in terms of just like writing for different characters, I mean, you've got what, well-known characters that, everybody knows how they talk, and everybody knows that every bit of every dialogue point that Shaggy has, he has to say like in there somewhere. So, you kind of pick up the show, and with those guys, having our backs, having the writers' backs in terms of what they want, keeping the characters' voices consistent. It's actually a lot of fun. I kind of describe it as like, I've had the benefit of writing for like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and the Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. For me, it's like writing for animation royalty, if as kind of odd as that sounds, but I really believe that it's like a privilege to write for those characters. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. And to answer your question directly, those guys, the story editors, that's their job, is to make sure that everything tracks towards what we would expect from the characters, even new ones. But it all sort of fits in with the tone of the show.
Out of the gang specifically, who's your favorite character to write for?
I really liked Velma. I thought Velma was a great character. She's my favorite character. And I would say beyond her, I like, Shaggy's awesome. And I don't know, they're all awesome. They all have their sort of fun moments. And that was kind of a cool thing, like finding what, going a little deeper on Daphne, let's say, and her sister, or something, what that family was like, and so what kind of reaction they would have, little snarkiness and all that. So I would say my favorite was Velma, followed closely by Shaggy.
Out of the really cool supporting characters in the episodes that you had written, was there one that you particularly enjoyed writing?
Let's see. I liked the guy. Let's see, his last name was Shepherd in the Hodag of Horror. He was sort of the huckster who brought the traveling curio show into town. Gene Shepherd was his name, and I enjoyed that character quite a bit. But there's a lot of fun characters, the brothers in the Battle of the Humungonauts, also, awesome. I guess the villains. I also liked um, Sheriff. Let's see, Sheriff Jones, I think is his name, right?
Stone.
Stone, Sheriff Stone. All right. Well, my Scooby cred is going down the toilet, but yeah, Sheriff Stone was a lot. He was a lot of fun because it's sort of he had so many conflicting urges that was always a fun character to write.
And for the minor characters that would be featured in just episodes that you had written, were you able to come up with the names for them, or was that already decided?
As I recall, it was a combination of both. Um, like in Hodag of Horror, the waiter, I think his name was Umberto or something, and you know, my as memory serves, and as people listening now know, my memory is somewhat sketchy. As memory serves, I was able to come up with names like that. So yeah, yeah.
Out of the episodes that you had written for the show, do you have a favorite?
Uh, well, let's see. I would have to say it would be the Hodag of Horror. That's the one that I use as an indicator of that. That's the one that when I'm going for a job and uh, my agent will send out like a list of, well, this is what he has available. The most requested are my Scooby scripts. And so out of those, I'm asked by my agent to pick the one that I think would be the best sample. And I always pick Hodag because it's number one pure nuts, but it's also it's a truly pure Mystery Incorporated sort of story. And I think I think I serve the main characters well and present them in the best light possible. So that's the one that I pick to send out as a writing sample.
And when it came to writing an episode, what was your specific process?
Well, I get word that they wanted to give me another assignment, and which was always very cool. And then I would go in and meet with those guys, and like I said, I'd have the premise ahead of time, whether it was supplied by me or by them, and then we would go through and we would beat it out in terms of this has to happen. We're going to reveal this part of the disc in this episode, and that sort of thing. And then once I had that happen, I would go home and I would write all that stuff up, all the taking copious notes. I would write all that out and then come up with a sort of like a first draft of an outline and then send that in, and then it would go back and forth maybe a time or two, and then once I had been given the green light to go to script, start writing the script, I'd basically do that, and I'd come up with a first draft based on that, and often there'd be like little snippets of dialogue that we as a group came up with, or I came up with in the meeting, and those would be inserted, and I would write a rough draft or a first draft and send it in there, and then we get notes. First from the creative team, Mitch and all those guys, and then once that happened, I would adjust to their notes and refine it, and maybe do another draft or two, with finishing up with like what is called a polished draft, which means that most of the rough edges have been knocked off of the story, so to speak, and the polished draft is just making everything smooth making sure everything is connected well, and there's good transitions and good dialogue and all that, and that would be it. So I would say a rough outline, a polished outline, first, second draft, and then a polished draft.
And were there ever any challenges to keeping the darker tone that Mystery Incorporated has while also still like inserting a lot of comedy and lightheartedness of Scooby-Doo?
Uh, no, not for me anyway. I don't know. I see. I grooved on all that stuff. I thought it was awesome, and I liked that this particular series had a little bit of a darker tone to it. There was consequences, that were kind of serious, and I liked that, and that it was a true mystery with peril, a lot with actual real peril. In the storyline. So I that didn't bother me at all. I actually thrived on that. I loved it.
And I have a couple of episode specific questions. I don't think they're like too specific, so hopefully they won't stump you here.
I will do my best to answer them.
So for the Battle of the Humungonauts, what was it like to write that relationship feud between Velma, Shaggy, and Scooby?
That was fun. I mean, I enjoyed that. I mean, in all the series, there's always a little bit of that going on, but I think it was sort of highlighted in this particular series. And so when there was conflict, it was fun to do it. And I would say the underlying note to all of that is that at the end of the day, even though they were sort of really, really hardcore, not getting along, there was always you knew that there was underneath it all, there was always affection and loyalty. And so I don't know. I enjoyed writing that.
And was it your idea for Fred's solution to the feud to be group uniforms?
I don't. That sounds like something I would do. So I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say 85% yes.
And in this episode specifically, Mr. E has a riddle that he gives them. But more broadly, what was it like to be able to, kind of craft those Mr. E clues?
Um, Again, I would say those characters like Mr. E, were sort of the purview mostly of Mitch and the other creatives on the show. So I got my cues on a lot of that stuff from them,
Okay.
and that was done obviously to, like I was saying earlier, to sort of like keep the voice of the show consistent. And what those characters weren't necessarily all over the series, but it was really important that when they showed up, what they contributed to a particular episode or to the series in general was very clear and consistent.
Moving on to the Wild Brood, how did you come up with the gag where Sheriff Stone wanders into a closet in Daphne's house?
Again, that sounds like one of mine, so I will take say 85 to 90% credit for that. And how I came up with it, I don't know. How I write in general is I'm kind of I have all my information that I've gotten, story wise and all that from everybody, and then I kind of do it in sort of a stream of consciousness way. And I whatever I have my skills that I apply to it. And if I if I went back and looked at the actual script, I might be able to tell you something, but offhand, I don't know.
Fair enough.
I'm sorry. I hope this is not disappointing to you or your listeners.
No, it's perfect. And in the beginning of the Sirens song, the episode starts with Fred and Daphne walking through the museum, and they come across statues of Flim Flam and Scrappy. Do you remember how that scene came about?
I think it was just looking for what would be in that museum, and like just sort of like going back and and sort of like almost like sort of like a sense tribal memory of like stuff that had happened in previous series and all this stuff. And yeah, I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here, but I remember specifically. I remember, Scrappy being well, it's not one of my favorite characters. Let's let's put it that way. And so I just remember thinking about a way to sort of like get a little dig at Scrappy. And I don't know, I've described him before as being sort of like the Jar Jar Binks of the Scooby series. Sort of this bizarre character that some people love, but not everybody likes.
All of your episodes have so many great lines that have occasionally turned into the odd meme, like Velma's response with like the chick mustache and like Scooby's like questions about love sequence. Did you ever expect that things like just lines like that would get that kind of reaction?
I'm always very pleasantly surprised when anything like that happens from any of my scripts from any show that I worked on. But I mean, on this one in particular, I consider it an honor when that kind of stuff gets repeated, and it's so much fun to come. Like I said, for me, the thrill was writing for this animation royalty, and then so coming up with lines that fit totally into their character ideally, and are fun and repeatable to me is just a real super nice sort of bonus.
And just generally, why do you think that a cartoon about a mystery solving dog has held up for so long?
Uh, Boy, I don't know. That's great. I just think over the years there's been some even like with some of the stuff that's sort of campy, sort of like traditional Scooby stuff. I think that whether it's the voice acting or the writing or the direction or the expectations that the audience has that it's you know at the end of an episode the mask is going to be pulled and the town whatever curmudgeon is revealed as the true villain. I think all of that stuff is just sort of a fun thing that people have sort of grooved on it. And as to specifically, I mean, why that would have gone on, I know, like, early on, when they pitched that stuff, I mean, I know it's because Hanna-Barbera had a great track record with getting shows that kids like to watch on the air. I know that they had probably a somewhat of an easier time pitching that sort of thing, but uh, in this case, a lot of that show, I mean, for years and years and years, sort of the same formula, repeating itself. I think that half of it has to do with the sort of like appeal of something that you recognize and you look forward to, and how are they going to do it in this particular episode?
And what was it like for you to kind of hop on to writing a show that you had grown up watching?
It was so cool. Like I said, I had that. I heard about it, and then I got my agents to go in and to get it so I could go in and meet with Mitch. And like I said, the meeting went well, and I got hired. And to me, that was like talk about thrilling moments in animation. That for me was one of my thrilling moments. It was so cool to be involved in that show that I basically grew up watching the original series. Every that was when the Saturday morning cartoon thing was in force, and every Saturday morning watching a Scooby episode was pretty darn cool. Many years later, being actually involved in the making of it. So yeah, and same for Bugs Bunny and the Warner characters. Very cool.
I think that covers all of the questions that I had for you. Is there anything else that you wanted to add at all about Scooby or about writing for shows that you grew up watching?
Nothing comes to mind. I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but I just I would say just in general, it's been a dream come true that I was not expecting to happen. That I'm an animation writer with so many great shows and stuff I'm working on now, stuff I worked on recently, Scooby stuff prior to all that, the Klasky Chupa stuff, all that. I love writing animation, and I always feel lucky and privileged when I get the chance to do it.
And just before we end, do you have any recent projects that you'd like to promote?
Yeah, well, I've been working on this show called Hello Ninja, which is a preschool show. It's about these two little kids, Wesley and Georgie, and they sort of work through life using ninja ethics and codes to solve their everyday problems, like being the first time they ride around the block on their bicycles, that sort of thing. And it's a lot of fun, and it's not above all, it's not preachy, but it's just a lot of fun thing where there's a bit of a message, but it's not too heavy-handed. So I've been working on that, and then I mentioned it before. I write science fiction and fantasy novels, and I've been doing that for years, and I just love doing it. And I got a couple books coming out that'll be out before the end of the year. So yeah, I keep busy. I like to write, so I like to keep busy with that.
Perfect. And do you have social media channels where people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, they could reach me on Twitter at Roger Eschbacher. I'm on Facebook. I've got a Facebook author page. They can just kind of look me up on there. It's easy to find. Also, I've, I've a surprisingly strong presence on LinkedIn, which is sort of the odd sort of channel, but I've met a lot of nice people over there. So look me up on LinkedIn too. Just enter Roger Eschbacher, and I'll be there. I'm trying to think. I got a blog, rogereschbacher.com, but that's kind of I made the mistake of believing a blogger when they said that their new thing was going to be better, and so I converted to it, and it's not better, and I'm having a hard time getting my old blog back. So that's a sort of a hesitant recommendation there.
All right. Perfect. I think that covers everything. Thanks so much for chatting with me today, Roger.
You're welcome, Alexa. I enjoyed it. You asked good questions, and I'm sorry I didn't have better answers.
And that concludes today's episode. Another huge thank you to Roger Eschbacher for chatting with me. For more groovy content, be sure to check at Unmasked SD on Twitter, at Unmasked SD Podcast on Instagram, or at unmaskedsdpodcast.com. You can also find the podcast on Facebook under the Unmasked History of Scooby-Doo podcast. If you like this episode and want to hear more, also make sure to check those social media channels or the website. Or you can listen to older episodes wherever you like to get your podcast fix. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode in this month's Mystery Incorporated theme, which features lead character designer Derek J. Wyatt. Scooby-Dooby-Doo!